off or negatively impacted those who've received the report, causing them to respond this way? I would venture to suggest several things. One, the conclusion that the issue of weapons and violence in our schools goes beyond the Jane Finch communities was unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. The suggestion that this is not simply about the black kids at Jane and Finch was a message that was viewed in the most absolute negative adversarial light. I had a nerve. I was putting public education unfairly. I was jeopardizing, because of my political agenda, jeopardizing public education. I still haven't figured out what my political agenda is. The liberals sure don't like me. The conservatives never liked me. And I haven't worked with the NDP in respect of education issues. So I'm trying to figure out, maybe the Green Party and I are together and I don't even know about it. What is it that makes us so frightened? And I have a guess about it months later. The essence for authority figures in running a public education system, the essence to their paradigm is keeping the lid on it. Public education has to be sold. It has to be sold to the public. It has to be sold as safe, right? And it has to be sold as effective. And the ultimate fear in the public education system, for those who run it, is the panic, the fleeing to the doors, the veritable fire in the theater, and everybody tearing out and leaving public education empty. And so this survival sense of keeping the lid on it drives how people see it. We don't say the nasties. We don't describe the ugly, because if we said all that, people would flee. They'd run in droves. We keep a lid on it. Our administrators are rewarded. They're actually rewarded under the heading, keeping your school out of the headlines. That could be a trophy awarded by not just the Toronto District School Board, numerous school boards. Keep your school out of the headlines. The administrator this year who kept his school out of the headlines the most is, and then they give out an award. They could have awards dinners with firefighters at the same time, because administrators are taught. Sure, the root of the fire is interesting. I'm sure we can do that at a conference one day, but just put out the fire. We'll talk about the rags being near the oil and the petrol and everything else that's hanging around and the guy that smokes right beside it. We'll talk about that root cause stuff later, but for now, put out the fire. How do we know, other than the rantings and ravings of this chair, former chair, not a chair of anything anymore, how do we know about the rant, that this isn't just about the rants and the ravings of this former chair? Look at the comments of Doug Jolliffe, current president of the OSSTF for the teachers, in the city of Toronto. In a Globe and Mail article of January 12th, and I may be giving you a wrong date, it was that week, in which he is quoted, and an entire article in the Globe and Mail is dedicated to his acknowledgement that there is a culture of fear, that there is a culture of silence, and that administrators are given the message that if you tell the truth about safety issues, people will flee from the schools and you will lose your jobs. That is not me, that is the president of the OSSTF. How do we know that these aren't simply the rants and ravings of the former chair? Look at the survey results released by CAMH a month after our work confirming the depressing frequency of sexual harassment and sexual assaults in our schools. not just in Toronto. Look at the survey results released 2 months ago in a StatsCan report concerning the increased resort to firearms by youth in crimes committed in this province. These are realities. Rather than run from them, we have to stand up to them. We have to look at them. We have to identify the elephant in the room and start talking about how to fix it. Why did our panel identify a culture of silence? Because we say it is inimical to solutions to be preaching fear from talking about them. You cannot arrive at solutions if people do not feel safe in discussing the problems. We encountered a systemic reality that high-ranking officials across the system did not feel safe in discussing the problems. Superintendents, as an entire group, with some few notable exceptions referred to in the report, the highest-ranking level of bureaucracy dealing with the ground, ultimately came out publicly and said the reason they wouldn't talk to our panel is they didn't get invited. Leaving aside the factual inaccuracy, how ludicrous is that? Is it possible that the panel's work for 7 months went on and they didn't hear about us? Leaving aside the factual inaccuracy that they weren't invited, what is more important is what does it say? It wasn't just the superintendents. At the TDSB, in that building at 5050 Yonge, when the tape recorder got turned off, I was told by some of the most high-ranking officials that they are afraid to talk. It's not because Jerry Connolly is some evil Machiavellian dictator. It's because of the culture that's been allowed to develop for years and years. Is there a likelihood that culture will repair itself? Well, all I can tell you is, on the day we released our report, before any opportunity for the minister to read it, I know that because she didn't have it before, she declared there was no culture of silence before she read the report. We face a chasm between what needs to be done, and right now,